morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Movement Radio. I am Chip Hazard,
And I am Talon Williams.
and we are joined by two special guests. We have Arthur and scriptwriter Kenyon Henry and actor David Stevenson. How are you guys today?
Doing great, man. No complaints.
Doing
Did,
great, thank you.
did I get all that right? Is there more to is more than Arthur and scriptwriter, more than actor? I may have
Well,
messed that up.
I don't think we have enough time to talk about all the things that we're both involved in.
man, we're wearing a lot of hats here, and poor David. David just kind of came along for the ride because hey, why not? And I've pulled him into more too, so we're both wearing many hats here. So
Sounds just like me. Man. But jack of all trades, master of none.
yeah, pretty much. I'd say we haven't mastered a single thing in this project yet. So but
Definitely
we're learning.
understand.
We're learning.
It's okay. It's okay to dabble. It's all right.
Yeah. So real quick, before we talk about the main topic, Kenyon, tell us a little bit about yourself. We met you right at a year ago at Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo, and you were we did a small little interview, and we're talking about a book that you were putting out. So we know you're an author. But tell us a little bit about your style of book and what you like to write.
Yep. So my books actually kind of range anywhere from I've got a short story that's in the horror genre. I've got a paranormal mystery, urban fantasy, and then now just a new series that's straight up fantasy. But all of them have kind of a connecting element in some way, shape, fashion, some way, shape, or fashion. And that's faith. Whether some of them it's kind of more upfront, some of them it's very allegorical. The horror story, a lot of people miss it, and they'll talk to me about it, and they'll be like, "This story seems familiar, but I don't get it." And then I tell them one piece of information. I say, "Think of this character or so and so," and they go, and all of a sudden it becomes a completely different story because it's just filled with allegory that you just don't see unless you know what you're looking for. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what I've written as far as my books. Yeah.
So a little bit about your upbringing. A little bit. You were born in. Were you born in the chatting? Because we first met. How we got connected when we were in Huntsville was like, hey, you live pretty much close to where I live at the time. I don't know if you said
Yeah.
you were living in East Ridge or Ringgold at the time. I can't remember exactly which city. But did you grow up here or did you grow up elsewhere?
Yeah, no, I lived here pretty much all my life. I was born in Knoxville, but I don't remember it. Thank goodness. Just kidding. Everybody in Knoxville. No, I pretty much grew up in the Ringgold, Fordo, Rossville area. Had one year where we lived in LA. That's lower Alabama for anybody that's west of the Mississippi. And but yeah, pretty much I went to Lakeview High School, which is I know is just down the street really from both of y'all. So
Yeah. Well, for me, Chip's a little bit further up north than I am right now.
yeah.
But yeah, but let's jump over to David real quick. David, you obviously said you was an actor as well. What about you? Where did you start off your acting career?
In a movie called Country Rain, I guess you could say it. No, I've done some very small things. I was a theater kid. I've done some small like pilots in. I live just outside of Nashville in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and so Country Rain. This movie is definitely the biggest project I've been on. But I've been extras in music videos. This is actually not my first time. Dean Cain was in Country Rain. And I was actually an extra in a different Dean Cain movie several years ago. So acting is a very small part of what I do. I'm also an author, and I'll be at Huntsville this coming up here soon as well.
Awesome.
That's actually how I met Kenyon. We both frequent some of the same conventions and sell our books, and we've had some good conversations. We were on a panel in Chattanooga. Gosh, I'm going to say like 2016 or 2017 or something. That's how we met.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that one.
Yeah, what's funny is I think we were talking about because Kenyon has kind of a faith element in a lot of his books and his writing, where I have superheroes in some of mine. And so one of the panels we were talking about like fight scenes, and I remember that's where I found out that Kenyon was a black belt, and I came in kind of nerdy, and I was like, I really talk about the inner workings of superheroes and like anxiety.
So okay, you said superhero. So did you grow up reading comic books, watching the cartoons and everything as well?
Cartoons for sure, yeah. They're rebooting X-Men right now, X-Men '97. Super
Yes.
pumped about that.
Yes.
I actually, what's funny is the comic books that I read were less superhero and more like I remember reading a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, the comic books. Loved those things.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like you're both looking. Oh, are you muted?
I think he's muted.
I am. That was my bad.
Like, man, he's
I
really
thought-
looking for the right word.
I thought he was buffering in real life. I was like, what's going on here?
No, so the reason I was muted is I was shaking up my water. I use flavor packets in my water, so I didn't want you guys to hear the rustle of ice over what you were talking about.
I got my flavor packet right here.
And this video is sponsored by Jolly Rancher.
No, we are definitely not sponsored. Although
yet.
Although if Jolly Rancher would like to sponsor Movement Radio, you can email us at movementradio2019@gmail.com, and we will gladly accept that.
Yes. Yes.
So you said that you write superhero style books. How many books have you written?
I've got 4 books out. 2 are a dystopian science fiction, and 2 are about a superhero with social anxiety. Yeah, and it's not the typical superhero. It's very much an internal. It's all first person, and it's basically a dude who is just terrified of everybody, doesn't want to be known as a human, as a person at all, and so he uses a face, somebody else, a really sexy dude, to take all the credit. But in the first chapter of that book, the sexy dude is murdered. So, but Kenyon, you've written what, like 8 books? 9? 174?
Yeah, I think it's 8. And when I get Country Rain flipped into a novel, that'll be 9. I was working on that earlier. So
Now
I'm not nearly as prolific as this guy.
So in terms of what both you guys write about, is everything that you guys write about faith-based, or do you deviate from that to some degree with some of the other works that you do?
David's just sitting there looking at me, so I'll go first. So, honestly, so the first series I had, I did know that there was going to be an element of faith to it, right? And that's a 4-book series right now. It ended up being 6 or 7 books, but I knew that would be faith-based. For me, God's been far better to me than I deserve, and so I knew that the first project that I ever did, I had to give it to Him, right?
Right.
Aside from that, the other stuff, I don't necessarily come out and try to write things that are faith-based, but I do feel like that who you are as a person, the things that are important to you, are going to come out in your writing. If I were to try to write something else, it would be disingenuous, and I feel like the readers would catch on to that. They'd be like, I don't think this guy really believes what he's writing, because I know I've read stuff from people before, and it's kind of like, this just seems weird, and you get to looking into the person, and you find out that's not what they're about.
Right.
But yeah, so when I say all of my stuff has an element of faith, like my paranormal mystery, it's basically kind of a Southern lit, and one of the things that you find in Southern lit often is elements of faith, right? Because it's kind of part of living in the South. So it's probably the least faith-based thing I have, even though it does talk about it a little bit. And then the things that are allegory, it doesn't necessarily talk about faith at all, but once you kind of start to envision certain things as other things in faith, then it kind of, the story takes on a whole new different meaning. But so that's kind of the way it is for me. like I said, some of the stuff I don't necessarily intend to write faith-based. It's just part of who I am.
Definitely understand that. What about you, David?
I would agree with that with Kenyon's perspective. I remember reading like Chronicles of Narnia growing up, and C.S. Lewis never smacks you over the head to say this is a, Christ allegory. And so I think for me, I'm a musician as well, and we never called ourselves a Christian band. We were five dudes that were Christians, but our music never would be categorized as that. And same thing with my books. I try to write in such a way where you're going to have to dig a little deeper, but if you are reading it, you should know. There's actually one scene in my second book that I wrote where it was a church scene, and this preacher was kind of interlacing the gospel in this scene. And one of my beta readers, thankfully, one of the early ones, a guy named Jeff Hess, was like, this feels like you're just trying to put the gospel in there for no reason. And I was like, oh, dang, I think you're right. I think I was literally trying to preach, and it's not about the story in that moment. And so I took it out because I'm like, if you can't already see it in the story, then it would just be me slapping you alongside the head. And specifically, that's something that I loved about Country Rain, is that this is a faith-based movie that Kenyon wrote, but it's not like people of anybody is going to be able to watch it. You don't have to be a Christian to watch it. It is about life, and there are elements where there is obvious faith elements that are talking about it, but it's not so preachy that anybody can enjoy it. Doesn't matter if you're an atheist or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim or whatever. I think that you can watch it and it's going to connect from a life perspective. And so that's the kind of stories that I like. I like connecting where we all connect, because we all have stuff in common.
Right. You mentioned just a second ago that you were in a band. What band were you in?
It's a band called Manic Bloom, and we were not country. We were based in Nashville, but we call it like epic melodic rock. Very different.
Okay.
Very different from
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
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 You'll be able to hear you'll be able to hear one of his songs in the movie too, by the way.
Awesome.
He's letting us borrow one for the film.
Awesome. I really can't wait. You've talked this movie up the several times that we've hung out and everything. I really can't wait to see the movie. I know it's going to be amazing. Similar to what David was saying earlier, I think some of my favorite faith-based movies are the ones that they don't knock you over the head. It's more life with the faith is there, and you have to, you don't really have to look for it. It's there, but it makes you like some introspective to yourself. You're like, man, that hit hard,
Even Jesus himself, most of his lessons were in stories. They were in parables. He didn't quote Old Testament all the time. I mean, obviously he made a lot of references to the teachings that they all knew, but he would be like, there was this dude, and he went out to a field and he found a treasure, and like he sold everything so he could buy the field, and like he talked about stories that people could relate to.
Yeah.
100%.
You stole exactly what I was about to say, David. No, but no, there was a lady at work, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, that asked me that exact question, like, why do you consider this your ministry, right? This movie and whatnot, like, how are you trying to help people? And I'm like, well, it's telling a story, just like like you pointed out, Christ did. Christ didn't beat people over the head with these things over and over. Sometimes he whipped them, right? I mean, that happens too. But most often, because it's something we can relate to. People live life and you do things, and when you have an experience and then somebody's able to draw on that experience, it's huge. And David knows this. As an actor, you're kind of on the opposite side of that, right? So when we go into acting and we go into telling this story, now we have to draw on our experiences so that we can accurately portray that experience in the movie. We have to draw on sometimes anger. We have to draw on sometimes painful experiences. And man, it's a little bit of a mind game being an actor. It really is. I'm starting to understand why some of these people end up going crazy and having mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have to do a scene where you're just, all in it and there's all this emotion in it, and then the director says cut and you're like, finally I can let go. And he goes, okay, everybody back to their ones, which basically means do the scene again. And he does it 20 times in a row, which is not unusual. It's just this constant roller coaster of up, down, up, down. And David, when we were filming, David stayed at the house here, and he can tell you, I'd come home and I'd be like, man, I'm exhausted. This is just a mind game, man. I'm ready for it to be done. And we only filmed for a week.
Yeah.
So, but it's two opposite ends. You're telling the story, which is, how you relate to people, but then the actor who is pulling from experiences to tell the story. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Kenyon wrote the story, and I think there was a certain version in his head, and then he acted it. And I mean, because of getting to live with him and his wife, for that week, Kenyon and I would run lines until like 2 a.m. Most nights, just to prepare for the next day. And I think it was interesting to watch him feel the character so much and like feel the emotion. Again, he wrote this stuff. He already knew it was happening. He knew what the story was, but putting himself in character was totally different than just telling a story. Because I mean, there's been plenty of times where I will write something and I'll cry. I'll be in a coffee shop in a scene and I'll feel it and I'll cry because I'm like, oh, that feels good. But doing it in a room with other people that have skin on, and they are also in their character, and everything, like, you're in that moment. You're actually in the scene. It's not just something that's in your head. Like, it's happening. And
Yeah,
so,
it's almost as if you become the person who you're portraying, basically.
yeah.
Do you think that's where a lot of actors, because I think one example that I think everybody always goes back to is like when Heath Ledger did his rendition of the Joker,
Yeah.
and how he had to get so into the character, and you even had actors who previously played the Joker, like a Jack Nicholson, tell him,
Watch
don't
out.
go too far because you could lose who you are, in a sense. So it's a weird mind game that you have to play. You have to understand, okay, like I'm playing a character, but don't get so caught up in this character that you forget who you are in a weird way.
Yeah.
David, what did you tell me? I think it was the second or third night. What was it you told me?
Give me more context.
So
Do a great job. That's what I said.
Well, so we all go into this thing, right? Dean Cain is the experienced actor, right? And then you've got Michael Siegler, who's done probably about 30 films with JC Films. He's a fantastic actor. And then the rest of us, nobody's ever heard of, right? And so we're all kind of sitting around talking at one point, especially me and David. And I'm like, man, I just feel like I'm going to be the weak link. And then he's like, I feel like I'm the weak link. And then he goes on and says, I don't know if he remembers, but he looks at me and he says, I have to tell you, you are Pete. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I'm Pete. He goes, no, you don't understand. He goes, you haven't been acting like yourself for 2 days. I'm like, what do you mean I haven't been acting like myself? And I spoke with my wife the next morning and told her what David said. And she goes, he's right. I'll be happy to get my husband back. I said, what are you talking about? She said, do you notice that when you walked across the room to come talk to me, that your walk was different?
Oh, wow.
And it just struck me. And so I started thinking about that. And these guys that do this they film for, 2-3 months, right? As these characters. I did this for a week, and it took me a week before I was me again, right?
That's
so
crazy.
These guys who do this for, 3-6 months, and then they have to try to figure out who they are again. I think I saw an interview with Robert Downey Jr., who who said that he was having this conversation with his wife, and he said something, and she looked at him. She said, "You know, maybe I need to remind you that you're not actually Tony Stark, and I will put you in your place." You know, and he's like, "Oh yeah," and I totally get that now.
Yeah.
It's a crazy experience.
Yeah. Entertainment Tonight did an interview. Oh, no, it wasn't Entertainment Tonight. I'm sorry. Somebody did an interview with Jamie Foxx, and they were talking about the movie Django Unchained and how Leonardo DiCaprio, who played Calvin Candy in the movie, had an issue saying the N word. He didn't want to say the N word throughout the movie. He felt like it was disrespectful and things of that nature. So he was having a hard time. And Jamie and Samuel L. Jackson and all the other African American actors that were in the scene with him said, "Listen, you're not Leonardo DiCaprio. You're Calvin Candy. We're not human beings. We're your property. You know what I mean? We are your property." The very next day, Leonardo walked in. He was like, "Hey, what's up, fam?" Walked by, like, I guess he ain't Leonardo today,
Right.
And then the scene went on without a hitch, So I guess it takes a certain type of person to turn that switch off and on, in a sense. Again, I don't want to change the subject in this regard, but it kind of, in a way, kind of translates to what me and Chip used to do as professional wrestlers, where we're this person backstage. Once we go through that curtain, we're a completely different person until we come back through the curtain. But you do have those guys that once you go through the curtain and you come back, you don't know how to turn it off.
Yeah.
Like what you said, King. Yeah, it is very difficult to switch it up. Like you said, it took you about a week to get your bearings back, to get back to
And a haircut.
being who you are, and a haircut. Okay, cool.
And yeah, the haircut is what did it. So I had grown out this beard, and I had grown all my hair out to where it was, much fuller on the sides and even fuller on the top. Had just let it kind of get shaggy, and there were a few little things in my voice that I couldn't get rid of, and a couple mannerisms that I would catch myself doing from time to time until I got a haircut. When I got a haircut and trimmed the beard back down, it all went away.
Yeah, I came back down to Georgia to help record something for one of the songs for the movie, and of course I still call Kenyon Pete. Like every time he calls, it's like, "Hey Pete,"
Yeah.
"Hey Charlie." But yeah, like the change from who he was that week to when I saw him, I guess it was maybe 2 weeks later. I was like, "Oh, hey, that's Kenyon. I remember that guy."
So Kenyon, when did it become a thing to where you knew you were going to write this script for this movie?
Wow. So I spoke with, I'm going to give you a long version. Sorry, I'll try to keep it short. I spoke
Nope.
with Kevin Sorbo.
As long as you want it to be.
Yep.
All right. I spoke with Kevin Sorbo at a convention, and it was kind of slow at the moment, and to kind of talk to him about writing in Christian film, right? Because Kevin's very much into Christian film now.
Mm-hmm.
And got to talking with him about writing, and mentioned that I was an author, and he suggested checking out JC Films if I wanted to be a script writer ever. And so I emailed him and said, "Hey, this is what I've done regarding books. Here, you can check them out. I'd like to talk with someone and see what it would take for me to kind of get my foot in the door." And they said, "Well, we're having a casting call down in Atlanta for this film we're doing called Karate Princess. Why don't you go down there, read some lines, and then talk to them about whether or not they could use a screenwriter on a future project." I said, "Okay." So I went down there, read some lines, ended up being cast in that film, right? The conversation about being a potential screenwriter never really went any further after the audition until the last day of filming, when Jason, who is the president of JC Films, came down. And I was at a restaurant that we were meeting at later, but he found out I was over there early, and thought I was just sitting there, but I'd found a corner to write in. And so he came in and sat down, and he said, what are you doing, working?" I said, "No, I'm writing a screenplay." He said, "Well, can I see it?" I said, "Well, it's only 10 pages. Sure." Flipped it around. He read some amount of it. He said, "Well, how's it end?" And I told him how it ended. He said, "Let's do it." I said, "Seriously? That easy?" He said, "Yeah, that easy." There's a little bit more to the conversation, but I won't bore you with the details. But that that was pretty much it. I kind of told him that while I'd been down there working on the film, God had been working with me on some things, and kind of told him what was on my mind, and some of those exact things had been on his mind. So we kind of connected that way too. So I finished out the screenplay, sent him the rough draft, and he replied back. He said, "Yep, still 100% on board. Let's get this thing cleaned up and get it fleshed out." It was like 45, 48 pages as a rough draft. It ended up being like 78 pages, which is basically an hour and 20 minutes on film. For every page of script, you've got basically a minute of film. So yeah, it ended up being about an hour and 20 minutes, I'd say.
That's awesome. That's it's really cool that Kevin Sorbo kind of steered you in the right direction. I met him uh, last year as well
Metrophicon,
at
right?
at a convention and
That's where I
had
met him. Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
super cool guy, very easy to talk to.
Met him in
One
the
of the
Green Mirror
most
eating donuts.
Yeah, one of the most down to earth guys that I've had the opportunity to chat with, and I say down to earth, and I mean that from like the perspective of like he's like super famous, and he was Hercules and all this, and he'll just sit and talk to you like he's known you for years, and that's really cool. Um, so you sit down, you get the script written out, you talk to Jason, and he says, "Okay, let's do this." Um, where do you go from there?
Well, that was kind of my question at that point, like what all's involved in this. And I think Jason was already having some wheels turning, and he didn't want to tell me the wheels that were turning because he was afraid I'd turn and run, right? But slowly, as things would come up and start happening, Jason would be like, "Okay, you can do this. I have full faith in you. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this." So we were talking about wearing hats. So in addition to being the screenwriter and being an actor, I'm also the executive producer. I'm also the casting director. I'm also the location manager. Um, I've written some of the songs for the film. Um, David and I will be composing music. Actually, that one will be mostly David composing background music for some scenes that just need something to kind of fill the quiet. Um, so there's a lot in there, and then some other things that is as well. But he kind of just kind of slowly started, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the full experience of how does this work? How does this come together? What makes it happen? That's the whole reason I ended up staying the whole week in Karate Princess, even though my part only filmed in one day. Right, I was down there the whole time for that because I wanted that experience. And so seeing that, and then working with Troy, who was a fantastic director there, and then just a fantastic cast and crew as well. I mean, it was a great experience. I got an opportunity to talk with Dean about script writing because Dean's written several as well. Um, so it was a fantastic experience. But that's where you go from there. I mean, once you say you're in and you're all in, you got to be real careful. People will take you up on it.
So you kind of hit it just a little bit, but a gentleman by the name of Troy Bakewell is the director of Country Rain,
Mm-hmm.
and he's directed a few other movies, too many to name. Um, but what was it like working with Troy? Because I'm sure as the screenwriter and as an actor and as an executive producer, you're kind of working hand in hand with him because it truly is your vision. You wrote it, but him being the director, he's putting people in place. So, what was it like working with Troy on that aspect of it?
Well, Jason gave me a couple tidbits of advice going into it, and it was great advice. The first piece of advice was that there are three versions of this film. Right? There's the version that I wrote, There's the version that the director shoots, and then there's the version that the editor puts together, right? And having been involved in all of those processes, David and I went up and met with the editor about a week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, and kind of saw that how he's putting things together. And it's like, oh yeah, well that's, because he's got all these different angles and stuff that he can put together to tell the story the way that he sees it unfolding, which gives it another spin on it. So that was fantastic. The other piece of advice that he gave me was this. He said, so you're the script writer, and this is your baby. This is your idea. It's not like somebody handed you an idea and said, hey, we're going to pay you to write a script. This is completely yours. You own the characters, all this stuff. He said, the director needs to have room to create his vision. Don't let him change your story because they will try. And unknowingly, it's not like they come in and go, well, I'm going to change the story. I mean, some might, I don't know. Troy wasn't like that. And, there were times when Troy would be like, I want to do this. And I'd go, no. And he'd go, well, but I want to do this. And I'd go, why? And he'd tell me why. And I'd go, no. And he'd say, why not? I said, because that changes the story and I'm not doing it. We're not going that direction, And we'd talk about it, and we'd move on. So
yeah, I think sometimes he would see, like, visually, oh, I like the way that this would look, and there were conversations where it was like, yeah, but shooting it this way, like, contextually would mean these differences of the story. And so I think at the beginning, especially, there were these moments where, I mean, obviously, Kenyon and Troy hadn't worked together. And so, like, first day, there was that trying to figure each other out. And then, goodness sakes, midweek to the end, I feel like it was a well-oiled machine where there wasn't this, like, I want to do this. No. But I want to do it. No. It was like, I want to do this. It doesn't work. Oh, okay. How do we work it? And it became a very complimentary thing to watch. It was beautiful to watch.
Well, that was the question that I was going to ask next. Did it become heated at any point between you and Troy? Your silence kind of tells me
that. There, aren't you? So,
well, wait, I think it's an important question to ask, because I mean there are some producer directors who they do clash, and I was just wondering if it didn't, because you just said it. I mean, the result turned out great, but
So I'll say this: creative people are passionate about what they do, right? We're very passionate people. Troy's a very passionate person. He's a great person to work with. I'm definitely a very passionate person. And there were a couple times, and we had a lot of stresses on the first day. Of course, we've got a new crew that's together, and by the end of the day, everybody's tired and things aren't necessarily working quite as smoothly as you want them to because of that and some other things. And there were two times. One was in the scene, which is right before kind of the big scene at the end of the film, right? And we're kind of back in the dressing room, and Pete's, going out hoping that he gets to be reunited with his wife, right? And he's looking in the mirror, and me as an actor and knowing the character and everything, I'm like stressing out back there. I really am, for that reason. And Dean Cain's about to bust through the door and yell at me too.
Don't give too much of the story away, by the way.
Yeah. Not giving too much away. But so I'm in there, and I'm really just kind of feeling it. I'm feeling the stress, and I'm just like, and what's going through my mind is, my whole life is about to change one way or another. It could be good, it could be bad. Either way, it's changing, right? And so we take the first take, and then Troy goes, "Hey man, you're about to get your wife back. Shouldn't you be happy?" I said, "Am I about to get my wife back?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "I don't know that." I said, "I'm about to give up a whole lot of things that I love in hopes of getting my wife back. Would you be happy?"
Pete doesn't know that, though.
Right. And he goes, "Oh, good point." And so we finished it out. And then when me and David went up, we actually got to see that scene. The editor pulled it up for us and showed it to us. And David looks at me, he goes, "Yeah, that's exactly the way that should have went." And because looking at it, you can you see it, knowing where it comes from now, and knowing where it goes. It's perfect. Another thing, looking back at it, it was one of the last things we did, and we were all just so tired. And we had already shot some pieces and things, and then Troy's like, "Hey, I want to do this differently," and I'm like, "No, it doesn't make sense to do it differently." And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "You're taking the focus off the main characters and you're putting it on this guy who's a very important character, but this is not his moment, right? We kind of give a nod to him in it, but this is you're in my mind, you're kind of breaking the flow of things to and if I were to tell you the change, it would be such a simple change. You'd be like, is it really important? Well, in my mind, it was. In Troy's mind, it was too, because he wanted to make the change. But in my mind, the way it would have changed the story wouldn't have been bad. And so we had a discussion about it. Ended up staying the way it was. But that was probably the closest we got to a truly heated discussion. And David actually walked up, playing the role of Charlie perfectly, who is kind of a peacemaker in the film, walks up and goes, "Hey guys, does it really matter? Is it really that important? You know, could we shoot them both ways?" Or, he's throwing out all these things. And then Troy just goes, looking at the time, he's like, "Fine, we'll just do it your way." And that was the end of it. And, after that, I don't think we even had really a disagreement. I think after that, if we had thoughts, we'd walk up to each other and we'd have a conversation before, rather than waiting till we're in the middle of it, talk it out and then go, which I think was part of the problem too, is we were in the middle of it. I was in actor mode, so I had all these emotions already going. And, I think if we'd had a conversation about it before, it might have been a different conversation too.
And the schedule was also packed. And so, I mean, that first day, especially, like, because we had extras, we had certain talent was only going to be there that day and that sort of thing. And so we were stressed. And so, goodness sakes, shooting a whole movie in 7 days, I didn't know how in the world we were going to do it. And somehow we did it. But like, yeah, like the stress of all that stuff. And when you're in the emotion of it and all that, I think, especially that first day, by the end of the day, we were all beat. Yeah. And it was difficult. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, like, we became a family, I think, very much so, all of us.
Oh, we did. Yeah, Troy was
that's awesome to hear.
Right director for that film.
What's that?
I was just saying that's awesome to hear that you guys became a family, during the process of filming this movie. Now, David, I don't want you to sit there and think that we're ignoring you. You play a character by the name of Charlie in this movie. And Kenyon kind of alluded to, you play this like peacemaker kind of thing. Tell us a little bit about Charlie, obviously without giving too much of the story away.
Charlie is kind of this in between of all the things. He is Pete's best friend and manager, and he's also his brother-in-law, because he is his wife's brother. Obviously, that's what a brother-in-law means. And so I feel like Charlie, in a lot of ways, is the glue between not just people, but also between like the story, because there's moments where Charlie is talking to Pete, but also talking to his wife Angie, and honestly, as a character, Charlie is a little conflicted because Pete is his best friend, but also his boss and his brother-in-law. And so, yeah, I think he is doing his absolute best. I mean, the very, very first scene of the movie is when they're younger, and Pete is a guy with dreams, and Charlie's basically like, well, what can I do to make those dreams come true? And just like supporting somebody else's dream. And that was actually, those were younger actors. They did a great job. That wasn't physically us. And so then you do a montage where like Pete is going up and Charlie is like, at first there's a scene where I'm playing guitar with Pete at a coffee shop, and then we're playing guitar at a little bar, and then it moves to where Pete's on stage and Charlie's in the back on the phone, and yeah, so that's kind of the character. The character is Charlie is just he's there for everybody, um, and there's only one little tiny scene where you I think really get to see that Charlie's life is not necessarily perfect, but it's only in one like a micro snippet of a line, because he's really there just as, he's going to be the best friend he can be, also the best manager he can be, and best brother he can be.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Kenya.
Yeah, I was actually just converting that into the novelization, that exact scene before this meeting, and that really stuck out to me. There's a line in there, and I don't think I quite realized the position that I put Charlie in, and it kind of made me laugh thinking back on it about being in the movie and how it all played out, and then seeing the people. But there's a line where Pete asks Charlie, he says, "Is she right? Have I been a bad husband?" And Charlie goes, "Pete, you're my best friend. She's my sister. I really don't want to be in the middle of it." Well, the fact is, he's already in the middle of it. He's in the middle of everything. And so when I realized that, it just kind of made me laugh, because I'm like, oh, Charlie, poor Charlie, you know.
Yeah.
That the more we talk about it, the more I cannot wait to see this movie. I know I've
Yes.
said that several times,
Me
but
too.
I'm super excited to see this movie.
I am too.
Now, I want to take just a step back for a second. To go, we're gonna go back to filming. Now, where did the movie? Where was it filmed at?
It was filmed in Ringgold, Lafayette, Chickamauga, and Rossville.
Okay, so
Whereabouts in Rossville, if you don't mind me asking?
In Rossville?
Yeah, whereabouts in Rossville?
Actually, the Catoosa County, Rossville. We filmed a scene at Mercy Ridge,
Oh,
Mercy
okay.
Ridge Church,
nice.
over off of Mac Smith.
Oh, okay.
Now the process of nailing down the locations that you were going to film at, how hard was that? When you're reaching out to these businesses and churches and whatnot that you're going to film, and you're like, hey, we'd like to use your building to film this scene in this movie that you really know nothing about. What's it going to take? How was that process?
So it sucked. So the week before Christmas, I get a call from Sheila, who is kind of like Jason's right hand. Sheila's a fantastic individual. She was with us all week during filming. Love Sheila to death. Jason needs probably about 3 or 4 or more of her. But she called me. She said, "Hey, Jason wanted me to call you and ask you if we can bump filming up from March to January." And I'm like, a month. He wants us to film in a month. I have no location set. I've got a couple of that have agreed. They just need to know exact dates, and we don't even have exact dates for March. And so I kind of went on this whole tangent, and I said, you know what? I'm going to call Jason. So I called Jason. I said, "Jason, what's going on?" And he told me why he wanted to move it. I said, "Give me a week. Give me a week to see what I can put together as far as locations, because we were kind of location extensive. We had a lot of different locations going on, but they were fairly close together as far as they go compared to the film I had just been on. So I felt like they were doable, but it was still a lot to put together. And so after a week, I was no closer to getting it done. It was a Sunday. I was going to call him after church and say, "Dude, I can't do it. I got to have March." And went to church. And Tim, the pastor over at Mercy Ridge, says, "Okay, so we're leading up to Christmas. We're going to talk about the nativity story, but we're going to talk about 4 words that in association with the nativity story, and we're going to look at them in a way that maybe we haven't looked at it before." And we hear these 4 words all throughout the nativity story, and they are, "Do not be afraid." And I'm like, where's he going with this? And so he goes and he talks specifically about 4 different people that hear that, right? Mary, Joseph, Mary's cousin Elizabeth, and then her husband was it Zacharias? Anyways, her husband, who is a priest, right? I can't remember his name. Anyways, and so the angel went to all of them and said, hey, do not be afraid. This is what God's done for you. All you've got to do is accept it, right? And out of 4 people, 3 of them said, okay, well, if God's doing it, then I'll trust God to do it. And one person doubted, and he ended up mute for the next 9 months. So Pastor Tim said if I didn't want to be mute for the next 9 months, I needed to accept what God was doing. So I got out and I looked at my wife, and she goes, Shauna goes, we're doing the film in January, aren't we? And I'm like, I think we have to. So I called Jason. He said, are you 100% on board? And I'm like, yes, I'm 100% on board. By the end of the week, we had probably 85, 90% of the locations locked in.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And it was Zachariah, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Now you mentioned your wife. She's also an executive producer on this movie.
Yes.
So what was her role? Was she just there as like to keep you in line, or what?
Well, she's my wife, so that's a given. That's what she's always doing, keeping me in line. And David can testify to that. But no, so she came into this project. She came into this project not really sure how involved she was going to be in film, but she wanted to see how things went, and she wanted to try to see how she could be more supportive in it, because she really believed that this was something that this was something that kind of God had put in our lives. And so as she got in there and started getting involved, she started getting more and more involved. She ended up being so we have a scene where there's a photo shoot that Pete's doing, and she ends up being the photographer. If you see any of her in it, it'll be the back of her head, right? Or maybe a shoulder. And you might hear her tell some ladies, okay, move this way next, something like that. And then she ended up being a stand-in. There's a kissing scene. The one thing she told me years ago when I first started writing, she said, if your books are ever turned into a movie and you ever decide to be one of the characters and you decide to kiss somebody, it better be me. So so she was a stand-in for the kissing scene. But she has continued to get more and more involved, even in post. Like I started making Facebook posts on the movie and doing the website, leading up to filming. And then after filming was done, she saw that I was still incredibly busy and incredibly covered up with stuff. And she said, hey, let me take this off of you. Let me take over the Facebook. Let me take over the website. Let me do some of this stuff, because she writes sequel for Shaw. So she kind of enjoys the technical aspect. So so she has taken that stuff over. She's committed to learning movie magic so that she can be the AD, assistant director on the next project, because she's very organized, highly detailed, and that's exactly what you need in AD. So and that'll be another way that she can be on set with me the whole time and be really involved.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep, that's great.
Now this question is for both of you. And Kenyon, we'll go with you first. David, you can answer second. Dean Cain plays a gentleman by the name of JR in this film. What was it like? We all know Dean Cain. He was Superman on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Lois and Clark. That's probably what he's most notable for. But in recent years, he has switched from less Hollywood to more faith-based movies. So what was it like working with Dean Cain, a very established actor, on this project?
So so like David, I had worked with Dean on a previous project. He was also in Karate Princess with JC Films.
Mhm.
And I was down there, and so I got to see him, interact with the cast and crew a little bit. He's kind of a funny guy. He's fun to be around, but he's come in, he gets his stuff done. On this project, when Jason told me, he said, "Hey, I want Dean to be in this project," because Dean's in a lot of other projects, not all of them, but he's in quite a few. He said, I want Dean as part of this project because I really like this story. Do you have a role for him specifically that you've already written? I said, oh, yes. I have written him a role that I think he will kill. He's the bad guy, right? So he's the representative from the record label, and he is a total sleazeball, right? And I had seen Dean play a bad guy years ago, and aside from Superman, I can't remember the name of the film, but it really stuck out to me. I'm like, man, he's a terrific bad guy. Like he really just makes me not want to like him. And so when I wrote this role, I wrote it with him in mind, knowing that he's very familiar with the country music industry. Of course, he dated Mindy McCurdy, um, you know, years ago. Directed 2 of her country music albums, and he knows George Strait, and all these guys in country music. And I was like, either he's really going to like this opportunity to be a bad guy in country music, or he's going to come in and say, man, I don't want to do this, right? And but he came in, and David was there when they called us back into the back room because he wanted to talk to me about the script. And his first scene was with David, so David came in too, and he looked at me. He said exactly what I just told y'all. He said, look, he said, I know this industry. He said, I know these guys. I know all this stuff. He said, and you've written a part where this guy just kind of comes off to me like a used car salesman, like a sleazeball, like you walk out of the room and you gotta go take a shower because you were in the same room with him. I said, yeah, that's how I wrote it. He said, good. I'm really going to get into it, and I'm really going to play it up. And I'm like, yes, right. And so we talked about the script. He had some ideas and some things and whatnot because of his experience. And I'm like, hey, have at it. And so I think he really enjoyed it. He came out, and man, he was cutting up in between scenes and just all kinds of goofiness. And the scene would cut as he was walking out of the room, and then he'd jump back out the room and just start like, and
Blooper material.
funnily, not like really yelling at people, but just like, I'm gonna go tell my mama on you or something like it was funny. It was really great to see him just lighthearted and energetic, and it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing
Awesome.
Dean Cain. He played a bad guy on an episode of Law and Order SVU. And I was like, wait, that's the same guy that played Superman? Holy, what? What? Like it threw me completely for a loop. I was like, man, this is the same guy that played Superman. Now he's talking about Detective Olivia Benson and, some graphic stuff, like, it's crazy. But David, same question that Chip asked Kenyon.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I did my best to not see Dean Cain and to see JR because I mean, Dean is a huge star. I remember watching every episode of Lois and Clark back in the day. Like I remember being in school and like literally I remember the beanbag chair that I would sit on while we watched it. And so like I think if I thought about him as Superman,
I think we got a little glitch there.
can you hear me? I'm up just for a second so that
Yeah. You're
there
you're
we
good.
go. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry
we
about
hear
that.
Sorry, y'all are a little glitchy. So no, you're good. It's me. I just got an alert that said my internet connection was not very stable. But no, so yeah, like whenever I went into that the dressing room with Kenyon and we talked about that first scene, I was doing my best to not see Dean Cain, Clark Kent, Superman. I was doing my best to see the character that I had already gotten familiar with, and he did a great job. And what's funny is, so we shot our scene, and there was one scene where we have blocked it to where it was written that I was supposed to get so upset and like stand up, and he was like, "You don't get to talk to me like that in my office. Like if you say that to me, you're out." Because I mean, my character is in charge, and we were like, "Oh man, you're right." And so we took that blocking out. They moved the cameras right up on top of me. And so at the end of the scene, he's like, "Get out." get out. And I freeze for a second because I'm like, I literally can't. Like it's physically impossible. And so there's one take where I like awkwardly stand up and like kind of shuffle in between so that I can get away from the cameras. But it was perfect because I mean like the way he shot that scene, and then really every take after that was like, oh man, he is in it. And he was like, I'm gonna throw you some curveballs like that. I was like, bring it. Like now that I realize I might even have to like limbo underneath a camera, like this makes it even more challenging. And so like every take was a little bit different. And so it was awesome because like I couldn't just regurgitate lines. Like I was having to have a conversation with this guy, and I was having to change based on what he was saying. Like I was having to kind of feel the reaction, and actually that was the reaction in the moment, which was amazing. And then right after this, we go out to block another scene where there's another actress, and so he is in character. He is like showing her, or they're working on lines together, and he's making her nervous. And he's like, "Hey, I'm in character. Like my character's a jerk. Just so you know." And he walks away, and she's talking to me about how nervous, yeah, he's making her. And I was like, "You're supposed to feel nervous. Like the way that your character is reacting to him is you're supposed to basically be afraid for your job all the time." And so yeah, he was great. And like Kenyon said, like I think as the day went on, he felt really comfortable with all of us, and we felt really comfortable with him. And so yeah, like he called her, like he called her mom in a couple of the takes, because like he yelled at her, and he's like, "Come on, mom, do it right." And like which changes the character even more, because like, oh my gosh, JR is literally yelling at his own mother. His own mother is this character pouring him some coke, and he's yelling at her. It was perfect. It was so good.
That's awesome, man.
Kenyon, with an established actor like Dean Cain, you know, he's been on dozens and dozens of projects. Now, you've written this script. Is there any point where he comes in and he was like, I'm not really feeling this. Can we change this to this? Or does he just stick straight to the script that you've written? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean that was really kind of kind of what happened in the dressing room. He wanted to look at the scripts, or look at his sides, right? Look at the lines and then talk about it. And so there was one section that I had written where he wasn't quite as sleazy at first. It was written so that he wanted to be sleazy, but there were circumstances where it was like, this kind of really makes me hard to be sleazy here, right? And so he just kind of very appeasingly is kind of like, okay, fine, we can do this, whatever. And he's like, no, 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 no. He's like, no, he's a sleazeball. He's going to be sleazy. We can still make it where he gives in and he goes, fine, whatever. But he can't sound halfway decent here. He's got to stay a sleazeball from beginning to end. And I said, okay, do it your way. I said, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I had an old boss where I used to work who used to say, if you're more passionate about it than I am, then you're right. And he was very passionate that guy was a sleazeball. So he was right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, when do we expect the movie to come out? I know it's in post production now. The editor's doing his thing, but there's got to be some kind of a timetable. When are we expecting this movie to hit the shelves?
So we are shooting for May 31st, June 1st is the premiere. Actually hoping to premiere it at Rise Up Con, which is Kevin Sorbo's convention
Okay.
up in Sevierville. It's Faith and Family. But more important than the date is to make sure that the editor has the opportunity to do the absolute best job that he can do, which he wants. The editor's super excited about this project. He's a guy, he doesn't take on a project until he's read the script and likes it. And he liked the script. He was super, super excited when we went up there and saw him. And he said, guys, he said, I got to tell you, so this is a micro budget film, right? So that means it's very, very, very tiny budget. It's not even low budget, it's micro budget, right?
Right.
And so we get up there and he goes, guys, he goes, I got to tell you, he goes, the actors y'all have, for a micro budget, he said, this is fantastic. He said, I can't tell you any micro budget I've seen that's got this kind of talent that showed up. And he was super, super excited about it. And so we just want to make sure that he has the opportunity to do the best job that he can because he's super excited about it.
Of course.
So
What
I would say sometime this summer for sure.
how much input do you have as the creator of this story? How much, I guess I won't say influence, but how much input do you have in the editing process?
Well, that was kind of funny too. So before we go up there and meet with him, he calls me a couple of days before and says, hey, I just wanted to call you real quick. He said, you know, Jason and Troy both have told me to kind of work with you on some things. He said, but I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle because actors usually aren't this involved in the editing process. He said, and it sounds like you're pretty involved. I said, yeah, I am. He said, so what's your function? How are you associated with this film other than acting? I said, well, I'm the executive producer. You know, I kind of went through some of the things, not even all of them. He goes, nope, enough said. He said, I understand. He said, sure, come up Friday and bring whoever you want. So that's how me and David went up there. So that said, again, going back to Jason's advice, you know, I want the editor to tell the best story that he can. All of my interaction with him has been, I've tried to keep it geared toward how can I support you? What do you need from us to make this better? You know, what can we give you, like in the way of music or in this? And then to go up and sit with him and look at footage and him have a couple questions and then say, you know, well, let's say it this way, let's say it this way, and then come back and give input. But I've got to tell you, he's done a bang up job. I think there were a couple things, and David noticed a couple things as well, where it's like, oh, can you back up? I think I saw something there, and you back up and look at it, and it's like, oh, yep, that's it. There was one scene where it looked like I just kind of appeared from nowhere, even though we know because we were there that I'm walking up. The way that he had cut from one angle to the other angle, you never actually see me walk up. It's just like all of a sudden I'm there, and it felt kind of weird. And so I pointed that out, and he went back and he switched angles a little sooner so that you see me kind of walk into the shot. Really, I think that was the only valuable input I had, but it made the scene feel different, I feel.
And there was one point when Terry, the actress that plays Angie, was talking about there was a certain take that she just really felt on something, and Kenyon was like, "Hey, just so you know, Terry said that she really liked this take," and he was like, "I said that moment. Oh, and my video's messing up again." But the actress felt it in the moment. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
got you.
can hear
We
you.
can hear you now.
If
Okay,
you want to
good. Sorry.
if you want to keep
Yeah.
your video off, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think for whatever reason, I think my internet's not doing great. No, yeah. So he was saying if the actress like really felt the emotion, I mean, it's a very emotional scene. He's like, if the actress was feeling that emotion, then I want to analyze that one and use it more than necessarily when the director is like, well, it was a beautiful shot, because it was like the emotion of the story is where it is. And so yeah, he actually switched to that take that Terry wanted, and I looked at Kenyon, I was like, yep, that was a good take. That was the emotion that we were hoping for.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Let me repeat that. Do you guys like what Chip says a minute ago? You guys are in post production right now. Do you have anything in the works right now aside from Country Rain, or is there something else coming on the horizon? Maybe something you may or may not want to discuss with us. If not, it's cool.
Well,
Give us some exclusives.
well, my wife. Oh, first of all, God bless my wife. She's probably the only woman in the world that could put up with me the way that she does. But so I've always got something on the horizon. I've always got some idea or something And unfortunately, just because I've started doing films doesn't mean that I've let my other ideas go to the wayside. So I'm still writing books. I'm still doing all this stuff, and somehow finding a way to bring the film stuff into it. So yes, I do have my next idea for my next film. That after I get this flipped into a novel, I will start fleshing out the script. I have more time this time, so I'm not in a rush. My wife and I agreed that right now the most that we're going to do is one film a year. We've already done the film this year, so I've got time. Being the executive producer, uh, we're financially invested in this film, so it's just another way also to kind of sit back and say, okay, we've put a lot of time, a bit of money into this film too. So let's wait and prepare for the next one, which will be next year. But yeah, there's always something on the horizon. The next film, I think. So Michael Siegler, I want to mention him again. Michael Siegler's fantastic individual and actor. David can back me up on that. He told me after the first day, he said, man, he said, you know, I agreed to do this film because you're my friend. He said, and when you sent me the script and I read it, I'm like, man, he has written a fantastic. I want to do this. He said, but I get here and I haven't worked with anybody, so I really didn't know how it was gonna go. He said, after the first day, he said, you have handed me my single best day filming ever, right? I got to be on a stage and perform and sing, and I felt like a rock star. Day two, we went to a ranch and we rode horses. And I said, well, how are you feeling today? He said, you have handed me my two best days filming ever because today I got to ride horses and be a cowboy. And so he told me, he said, the only thing that I would love to do that I haven't done yet is ride motorcycles on film. So um, if this holds true, the next film should take care of that.
Awesome, awesome. David, what do you have coming up? You have anything in the works?
Right. So I same thing. I have always got irons and fires. I'm also not very good at multitasking, and so I'm working really hard on Country Rain. Kenyon and I are working on some music. I'm going to come back down there. We wrote a song for I think the credits, and we're going to be recording that soon. I'm going to be doing some scoring. I literally I was up in the Indianapolis Indie Comic Con this past weekend and selling books, and so I came back through. My parents, I grew up in Western Kentucky, and so I stopped off there and literally just took three of my dad's guitars because they have different tones that I wanted for this scoring, and I could tell that he was hesitant to give me these three guitars, but they I'm just really excited, and I'm probably gonna buy a mandolin too, Kenyon, because I hear a mandolin.
I can probably get you one.
Okay, well maybe I'll be borrowing a mandolin.
I know somebody else who so Josh Gilbert, who was the lead guitarist for Pete, wanted a mandolin in his band, and so he had Nathan, who was the bass guitarist, go buy one and learn to play it. And
nice.
He's only played it for that one performance, so he has a mandolin I can probably get you.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
But sorry, continue, David. Sorry.
That's awesome. Well, I think I'm glitching. Can y'all hear me?
We're good. You're good.
There you go. Y'all just came up. So right now, music for the movie is one of my main focuses. I'm also I just got my newest book out in January, and so I'm trying to get. There was a 7-year gap between book number 1 and book number 2, and so I'm trying to make sure there's not a 7-year gap in book number 3 in this series. And so that and I this is totally unrelated, but I'm trying to work on a virtual reality game, and so I haven't been able to spend a whole lot of time on that lately, just because I've been pulled in every direction. But it's all good directions I'm getting pulled into, and so I try to do too many things. I like everything. I'm interested in everything, so always projects.
Definitely understand that. So David, real quick, where can people, if they want to buy your book and read it, where can they find that information at?
It's on Amazon. If you go to my website, davidjoelstevenson.com, that's Stevenson. All of my books are there. Amazon links. Yeah, you can find my music there too. And yep.
All right.
Awesome.
And Kenyon, same for you. Where can they find your books? Where can they find information about Country Rain? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So books, same answer. Amazon's probably the best place to get that. Really, you can get it anywhere where they sell books online, especially in electronic format. But Amazon. Um, the music, if you're interested in listening to Pete Ford sing, you can find his stuff on Spotify, as y'all mentioned. Um, CountryRainMovie.com. We'll give you some information on Country Rain, but I would say hit us up on Facebook, Country Rain Movie on Facebook. We've got posts going out and updates going out every single day. We've grown from, I mean, guys, we don't even have a trailer yet, right? We started like a week or two before filming, making some posts, and we've got 830 something followers as of today. Just from the posts that we've been making, not advertising trailers or anything like that, which is a lot for a micro budget film that hasn't even come out yet. So
You have
go out there, check it out.
834 followers as of this recording.
Okay, so and we'd love to see that get to 1,000. So JC Films production company, I think it's called JC Films Presents on Facebook. I think they have. If you just look initially, it like pops up at 10,000, but if you actually go in, I think it's close to 19,000. But I would love to get to like 10 or 20% of that just for our movie before it releases. I think that'd be fantastic, and see if we can't really make a good showing, because we're going to make more movies.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. And of course, we'll have all that information in the description below when this comes out on YouTube. So, people will be able to go and look at all of your stuff there as well. Gentlemen, we greatly appreciate you joining us today. We greatly appreciate you sharing Country Rain with us.
Yes.
I for one, am immensely grateful for your time. Somebody told me one time that the greatest thing that anybody can afford you is their time, and you have given us 2 hours of your time, and so thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thank
guys
you
for
all.
being here. Absolutely. If you guys want to just hang around for just one quick second while we pay a few bills, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go check out Country Rain whenever it comes out. Like what we said, we'll keep you guys updated on the trailer whenever it gets ready to come out as well. We will be giving you guys updates. Also, again, thank you, Keenan and David, for joining us here tonight. If you guys do want to continue to support Movement Radio, please check out streamlabs.com/Movement Radio/merch and go copy some merch. Chip, anything you want to say before we get out of here this evening?
As always, please do not leave without leaving a like, comment, share, and subscribe on Spotify and right here on YouTube.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, like, comment, share with your friends. Get this out there because we want everybody to definitely check out the film Country Rain. Again, King and Dave, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And until next time, I'm Talon Williams.
I'm Chip Hazard, and this is Movement Radio.
God's plan.